On today's show, Laura Heywood interviews
actor, singer, songwriter Brittain Ashford. Welcome to Laura Heywood Interviews. I'm Laura Heywood. Usually at this point in the show, I read a diligently prepared, well-researched, articulate introduction of the day's guests, and it includes like their best-known credits and a few fun facts and some carefully curated compliments. The whole show's unscripted, but usually the intro is structured. Not today. For today's show, I sat down to write Brittain Ashford's intro, and I put on my headphones to listen to her upcoming album, Drama Club, as I wrote it. But the music just overwhelmed me so much that I literally couldn't do any work. I just kind of sank into it, and it was this experience of being transported. The closest way I can describe it is like it was a full body experience. I couldn't put my writing hat on because I was just lost in these reinventions of songs that I thought I knew. The album's called Drama Club. It's technically a covers album, but it is not a typical cover album. Sometimes covers are karaoke tracks with just it's the same song but a different singer. But this is even though you see the song list and it's I Could Have Danced All Night and Defying Gravity and, the single that's been released, You're the One That I Want from Greece. You think you know what to expect, but trust me when I say you do not. Brittain Ashford, you have reinvented these songs in a way that feels like they've been excavated. Like you've dug out the subtext I never knew was there. And sometimes the way that you hit a word or a phrase highlights the actual text to the point where I had to look it up to see, were those lyrics always in there? Because I thought I knew this song by heart, but I'd never really heard it before. So I can say with no hesitation that this is, I've never been this excited for a full album of music, not just a track or two, but every single song. At the risk of sounding over the top, I'm just going to say that you've created a masterpiece.
Oh, thank you.
Drama Club is going to be released in July. And the hardest thing about this is that people can't go out and just listen to the whole thing right now.
So sorry.
But there is a single release. We're going to, you brought your, what is it called?
It's an Autoharp.
Which is a beautiful sort of it looks like an old thing, an old-timey
it is.
kind of thing.
This one in particular is not that old. It's probably from the 70s.
Uh-huh.
And an Autoharp is the party pitch. People are like, what is that? And I'm like, it's a traditional Appalachian American folk instrument. A stringed, a fretless zither.
Fretless zither?
Yeah, and then people are like, what is a fretless zither? And I'm like,
other than a good band name.
Yeah, right. maybe that's my new band name.
I mean, especially if you're playing one.
Yeah. People will be like, tell me why the band name? And I'll be like, well, the Autoharp is a traditional American folk instrument. But they in one form or another, I want to say turn of the last century, Autoharps started appearing, or things like them. They're distant relative. Or not too distant relative. So.
It is smaller than a harp.
Smaller than, some harps are smaller.
You're right. I guess I'm thinking of the
Oh yeah, a grand harp. Yeah, it's, I have a strap on it, and then I wear it, to see me perform live. So it's a little heavy, but manageable. So, and then I can play it upright. Some people play it flat on a table, but you get this heavenly sound. If you're playing out a full chord, which is fun.
And do you do a lot of picking on it too?
I do some. I don't generally pick out distinct melodies. I leave that to, if I'm playing with a band, I usually leave that to an instrument that people recognize and really like just piano or guitar, that are both instruments that are so much more versatile. Mm-hmm. I love the Autoharp, but it's a little limiting. Because you only have so many chords that you can work with.
What makes it an auto? Where does the word auto come from?
So,
because when I hear auto harp, I think of the player piano of harps. It just plays automatically.
It plays by itself. So you have these chords. They're buttons on the soundboard that you push to get the chord.
Oh,
so
cool.
there's only, and it's generally arranged in a circle of fifths. And when you get one that comes straight from the factory, it has very basic chords. I think when I got this one, it didn't have C minor on it, which feels weird to me. But they decided that that wasn't like a chord that people really used or needed, because most people probably are going to play in the key of C, as I always joke, is the people's key. You know, this key that like almost everyone can
It's like
find.
no black notes on the piano.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like and most people can find their way, and most people can also play along with it. But obviously, working on my own music and also working with Dave Malloy, he wanted me to play Autoharp in Ghost Quartet. And if you know Dave's music, you know there's a lot of interesting chord progressions. And
Yes,
so,
I realized that in that intro that I did not write in advance. I left out how people might know you, which is as Sonya from the Broadway smash hit Great Comet, Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812, where you played Sonya's Good, as I like to call it. That's her last name. Or
Yeah.
Sony Alone.
Yeah.
That's her other last name.
I always joke with people when they talk about seeing that show, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I loved it. Really overwhelming." Who are you? Because I mean, whatever. When you see a show like that, or any Broadway show for that matter, are you going to recognize someone if you see them like in an elevator? Like often not. So I would always tell people, giving people zero credit. I'd be like, I was the sad cousin, and they're like, "Oh, I love that song."
I remember her.
Yeah, I remember her, because there's so much to remember.
Well, and like the spectacle of it all.
Yeah, and like, what are you at the end of the day? Like, if you saw it 2 years ago, are you gonna think back and go, "Oh, yes, of course, white dress," and like, if you know the show,
The bun in her hair.
yeah, right. Oh, did she have the braids? No one's gonna think about it that way. So, but I can say sad cousin, and that's like a thing. People are like, "Oh yeah, I remember that song," you know.
Well,
So-
that song, Sonya Alone, not only, I think my first reaction to it was like, this song is perfect for her. And then I learned that it was written for you. Your history with Great Comet is so deep that like you were there when it was an idea.
Yeah.
And then you were one of the muses, one of Dave's muses.
To be fair, I didn't think it was a very good idea.
What, a musical based on War and Peace?
Yeah, I mean, Dave, who was a friend of mine at the time, you know, he was like, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something. I've got this idea." And I was like, "Uh-oh." And like, we went for drinks, and he was just like, "I'm writing a show based on War and Peace." And I was like, "Lol, is it long?" Yeah, you know, like,
Longest musical ever.
yeah, and he was like, "No, I'm serious." And I don't think I said it to his face at the time, and I was like, "I don't know. Are you sure? Are you sure this is a good idea?" And of course, absolutely, 100%. Like I knew Dave was, even at the time, even though I was like, I don't know. Well, is a musical adaptation of Beowulf a good idea? But that
Actually
show,
saw that.
it's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's brilliant, and Dave is brilliant. So at the time, I was like, well, Dave is brilliant. So whatever this is, it'll be good. Like, so fine, I'll do your workshop.
And he also wasn't like, and it's going to get a big following, and we're going to then go to Broadway.
No, and honestly, there was even a point where, in talking to Dave about the show, and he was like, Broadway, like, there was a point where it was like, that became the goal. It certainly wasn't initially the goal. But in talking to him, and he was like, yeah, you know, I think it's really possible. And I'm very pragmatic, particularly when it comes to, like, professional endeavors, because I don't, you know, you don't want to count your chickens and all that stuff. And it was more for myself, because like Broadway was this teenage dream for me. And I was like, all right, Dave, I mean, I love the show. It's beautiful. It's brilliant. Like, but do you really think Broadway? And he's like, I've got 2 words for you. Les Mis. And I was like, touche. You
And
know?
is it true that Les Mis, that like somebody left a Les Mis cassette at your house when you were a child, and you were like, what is this thing?
That's
It's your origin story.
It is. I was like, you read the whole thing. Yeah, that was, because I grew up with music in my house. You know, like we had a piano, and my dad sort of casually played guitar, and that was always like something I loved to go. My dad would play guitar on the edge of his bed, and I would like go and like listen to him play. And I loved that, but it wasn't like, and now we take piano lessons, and here is this thing. Like, music was always there, but musical theater, particularly like at that point, I would say contemporary musical theater. Like I knew about, it's just sort of like planted. Like my dad would always sing songs from like South Pacific.
I think we had the same dad. My dad would say, like, I'd fall asleep and he'd be singing, like,
"We got sunlight on the sand." Well, probably not while you were sleeping, but
well, no, I mean, my dad's a singer, and he was getting ready to audition for a new choir when I was about 9 or 10. The one that I remember him singing the most was actually "Sunrise Sunset" from Fiddler, but also he loved. Like the classics. And there was, I thought Broadway was like Gilbert and Sullivan, or the old stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And then probably around the same time you did, I discovered Les Mis and Phantom, and I thought those were the only two shows that had been written.
Yeah,
since the 60s or something.
I want to say, I mean, I was aware of Cats because I feel like the tour for Cats was being advertised on TV like all the time, like get your tickets today for the like blah, whatever, sweeping the nation. So like I knew that theater was a thing, but it was very abstract, and so I was digging around in our basement, like as you do as a child when you're bored and it's summertime, and my brother's ex-girlfriend had like left this like box of stuff, and it was like a handful of cassettes and like I don't even remember what else, but I was like, ooh, cool music. Like what cool music was my brother's girlfriend listening to?
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this? And I'm like, oh yeah, I think maybe I've also seen this advertised on TV. Like, curious. And at the time I was like really into like oldies, like 50s and 60s music. Which my brother also hated, like passionately.
How much older is he?
My brother's like 8 years older than I am.
Okay.
Seven.
So they were teenagers, your brother and his girlfriend, which I can only imagine at 7 or 8, you were like, they are the coolest.
Oh no, this was like, for me, to be fair, I was a little bit older.
Okay.
I think I was like junior high.
Got it.
And so I think he was already out of the house, which is like why this random box of stuff was there. Like, why was it there? I don't know. So
it was there because you had to discover it so that you could get inspired and learn about musical theater and go on to star
I genuinely
on
knew
Broadway.
that. Like, I remember listening to the tape and being like, holy, like, this is like this whole emotive world of sadness that I was like, as in junior high, I was like really able to dig my heels into it. So that sort of started like, yes, seventh, 8th grade, and then I was like, I want to go to the school with a good theater program, and then I went to the school with a good theater program, Roosevelt High School. It's like used to be recognized as one of the top 10 public theater schools in the country.
That was in Seattle.
Seattle, yeah, and I mean, I'm sure it's still good. I was like, but like at the time, and then this woman I met my freshman year of high school, got me into Ragtime and The Secret Garden, and we hung out like every day. I went over to her house after school one day, and there was a guitar there, and she was like, "Oh, my mom's weird friend had a dream in which she gave me this guitar, so she just gave me the guitar, but like I don't want it. Like, do you want it?" Because I was already like sitting down with it, and I was like, "Oh, cool! I didn't know you played like." And she was like, "Ugh, I don't. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Are you sure? Are you serious?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I was like 14, 13, 14. And like, so I started writing music. Like,
it was like a literal gift from the universe.
Yeah. And I mean, and of course she's still doing music too. She sings like opera and stuff in Seattle. Tess Altavero, she's a beautiful human. But like, what a weird series of events. And I often think about this, like if one little thing changed, like I absolutely would not be sitting
That's a
here
scary rabbit
in this
hole
moment.
to go down.
It's a scary rabbit hole to go down, but it's like, would I have ever like really given myself over to music? Because the truth is, by the time I finished high school, I was like, oh, like I love musical theater, but I don't know my place in this. Mm-hmm. And I love it and I can enjoy it, but that doesn't mean I have to do it. And so I kind of like turned my back on the idea of theater in general, but specifically musical theater. Like I did improv in college and
University of Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Did you sing a cappella there?
I did not.
I love hearing from people about their collegiate a cappella careers.
I wish I had done more music in college. I took a couple theory classes and some like music history classes, and it didn't quite click. Like I just felt like I wasn't getting it. You know, like the history classes are fine, like whatever you learn about Baroque, whatever, you know, like those were great and delightful. But ultimately, in taking the theory classes, I was like, I got it, but I was like, this isn't interesting to me. I wish I had stuck with it because I wish I had like a better understanding. Like going back to like working with Dave and working with like the people in Ghost Quartet, like those are people who like, oof, they know their theory.
Oh, that's one of my favorite things I've ever seen.
Really?
I saw it on the New York Theater Workshop next door space.
Okay.
Just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it was one of those just sort of, you just surrender to it and let it take you away.
It's such a special show. And again, a show that the four of us developed together. And that actually circles back to the Autoharp and like there's some really untraditional chords on my Autoharp now. And that's just because of doing that show. Like, oh yeah, and you know, you don't need an E. Like I don't have an E on this, but I have like a C#7 or something. You know,
can you play me one of your weird chords? Will it sound weird on its own or is only in comparison?
It may. Like, here, let's see. This is...
It sounds like I just had a brilliant idea.
It's a great idea. But like when you're like, oh yeah, if you're just like hanging out in the world of like pop music, and then you're like... Yeah, right? You're like, oh, there
I love it.
I think the only other... What is this? Oh, yeah, there you go. That's what I like to call a Dave Malloy chord. Just like... So...
Well, okay, so I want to... There's so many, like, avenues I want to go down with you. But I really want to make sure that we talk about the album because, as I waxed poetic about, the way that you've reinvented these songs does sort of feel like I never understood them in the first place, or like I talk to people a lot about revivals of musicals and why to do them. And sometimes I think producers want to do a revival of a musical because it feels like an easy paycheck. And they're like, you know, such and such made a lot of money last time and the tourists still want to see it. So let's just throw it up on a stage and sort of do what they think their, you know, friends saw 10 years ago. And then other times they go, if we put this through a different lens that's specific to the time we're living in right now, and we think about the clues that the people who wrote it gave us, but reinterpret those clues through, like, the messaging that's happening in the world today, we could do the same show but also do a brand new show at the same time. And that's what I want from a revival.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of what you've done with this album. I mean, there are certain songs, you have this, I mean, the fact that you did Ghost Quartet, everything that you do has a haunting element to it, I think. I've been listening to the albums that you made with your band and a lot of the, you know, the singles that you've released, the originals, and there is this element, and I think it's something to do with your voice quality too, is that it's ethereal kind of. And some of the songs on here, like Quiet Uptown from Hamilton or, you know, Send in the Clowns, are known for being a little bit sad or a lot sad.
Yeah.
And then there are others, like the one that I'm obsessed with is Tomorrow from Annie, which is like, I always just think of this little girl, like, putting her fist in the air being like, everything's great.
Yeah.
And the way that you sing it, like, are you okay with me playing
Absolutely, yeah.
A little bit of it?
The sun'll come out tomorrow. Bet your bottom dollar tomorrow.
like, okay, so it feels like tomorrow's always a day away. And like when you're in despair, you want the sun to come out today. Like, I don't want it to come out tomorrow. Like, I need it now. And there's this longing in it. Can you talk to me? Like,
No, I think, well, there's a few things. I think no one ever questions that the people who write for theater are brilliant writers. No one's ever like, well, that person's a hack. You know, like, nobody goes back and listens to showtunes and goes, well, this was poorly executed. I mean,
not the ones that make it to Broadway.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, universally, it's like the craftsmanship is there. But I think that there's always been this idea, the cool factor, for lack of a better word, that, like, the people are like, I don't know, it's just a little over the top.
Mm-hmm. Jazz handsy.
Yeah, you know, like, so, but the songs are so beautiful. And as you're like, so for say like Quiet Uptown or Send in the Clowns, like those are songs that actually, at the end of the day, I don't really feel like I super changed the fabric of the song. Mm-hmm. Like they are ultimately, those are just sad. Like even like I was recording Send in the Clowns and I was like, very, very personal to me. But for say like a song like Tomorrow where, yeah, you listen to the words and you're like, as an adult, in 2019, I'm like, oh God, like I hope the sun comes out tomorrow. Right. Like,
but it's different. It's a different kind of hope. It's like oh God, if the sun doesn't come out tomorrow, we're all going to be lost. As opposed to, you know, being like, I know it's going to happen because of course it's going to happen because yay.
I mean, and like I think it's super important. You know what's funny is that like my outlook on life is very positive, you know, like as far as like how I live my day-to-day life. Like telling someone yesterday, actually I'm about to say this out loud and I'm like, maybe this doesn't sound good, but I was like, yeah, my mantra these days is, yeah, I've made peace with that. And they're like, huh, interesting.
If only we could all live by that.
Yeah, you know? I don't. To be fair, now that like I'm not doing a show, I don't come into the city every day. And quite frankly, I find there's some moments because I'm not taking the subway every day the way I used to. Sometimes I have these moments, like there was this woman that was on the train on my way here and she was just like, at first I thought she was just like reading poetry or something, but it got like real dark and real weird about all the real dark and very real weird things that are happening in the world right now.
Was this someone asking for money? Or
don't
showtime?
No. Like, I think it's just like she was just saying her part.
She just was having an interior monologue out loud.
Yeah, but it was like at first I was like, yeah, like that's true. But then like it like got weird. It got super weird. And there's part of me, like as New Yorkers, we're like, okay, we just ignore that and that goes away. And then there's part of me that was like, oh, I want to have. Initially, I was like, yeah, I would love to have like an interesting, intelligent dialogue with this human. But then I was like, nah, I just need to get off the street. You know, like, or it's like, we make peace, that it's there. But like nobody wants to pick a fight. I don't want to pick a fight.
Right. But I could also see you getting inspired by that little piece of you that wants to have a dialogue with her and like writing the dialogue from, because your songs do have a storytelling element, and I could see you writing a duet between yourself and what you imagine this woman to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important. Yeah, because I think about like Good for Goodness, that song, which was written almost directly in response to, at the time, what was happening. I think it was just after the last election cycle, and everyone's getting really angry, and this idea that like, let's take a step back. And it's funny because that's like definitely more, the message is positive, but as you say, like the sort of like mournful quality to my voice, I don't know. But again, I just think of myself as a generally positive person. We all have our moments. Sometimes I'm like, maybe I'll die alone and be eaten by my cats. I don't even have cats.
I know it's in your Twitter bio. Your Twitter bio is like 2 lines. It's like, I make art, I don't have a cat.
Yeah, but maybe by the time I get to that age to die alone, maybe I'll have many cats. Like, we can all dream. We have to have aspirations. You know, like-
I've never heard somebody say their aspiration was to get eaten by their cat.
No. I don't think my aspiration is to be eaten by them, but to just get them.
Oh, great. Well, that's, you know what? It's good to have attainable goals.
Right.
The thing about Good for Goodness is it is sort of has a mournful tone, but it's got lyrics like, let your heart be light, let your spirit rise. There is this duality of mournfulness and hopefulness that I don't see layered into each other that often with that many artists.
Yeah, but I think it's like that's where it comes from. And even like taking that back to tomorrow, even if like the words are optimistic, but you're allowed to present that from like a real place.
Can you imagine if Annie was
no.
done, like if you presented this as like a spec song for a revival of Annie? I mean, Oklahoma is doing something kind of like that on Broadway right now. It's this, people think like, Oklahoma, where the and it's so dark.
It's very dark. I saw it last week. And it's so dark and it's so good.
It's so good. But I have a friend who like never goes to the theater, but grew up listening to the cast recording of Oklahoma. And he texted me afterward and was like, I hated it. That is not what Oklahoma is supposed to be. It is like, I wanted my Oklahoma.
Yeah,
Don't tell me I'm getting Oklahoma. And I was
then go see it at the Des Moines Civic Theater, where like that's where it is. Like we don't need that in 2019 in New York.
right.
Where,
Well, and
like,
to me, that was almost like, that's exactly why we're doing it.
Yeah.
Is that old Oklahoma, that traditional Oklahoma, it's nostalgia now.
Yeah.
And I want theater that is speaking to who we are and what the world looks like now.
Exactly. And I think that they did that super well. And it, integrating even like certain design elements, we were like, oh yeah, that's where we are now. Like, we don't need to pretend that, we're on the frontier and that everyone needs this impeccable accent or like, this is the thing that always, when I think about what theater can do as a medium, like, people sometimes will say, well, that person can't play that person because that's not how it was in 19th century Russia. Like, there are all these people of color. Like, what is that? Like, how dare you?
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know. If someone said that to my face,
Did somebody?
Actually, there was one woman who said in a talkback, said something like and how she phrased it was definitely like, why are we doing, like, why? Like, it wasn't like, how dare you, but it was like, it was all in her tone. And
why is it not all white people?
Yeah, I mean, that's not what she said, but that was kind of like what she said.
Yeah.
And I was like, because it's not relevant to the story. Our suspension of disbelief has been like checked, like, we're at the theater where anything is possible. So why not have Allie Stoker playing Ado Annie?
Well, Allie and I just had this conversation at Tony Nominee Press Day where, though Allie's in a wheelchair, but Ado Annie isn't in a wheelchair. And this is the kind of, because if Ado Annie was in a wheelchair, it would be like an old-timey wicker, high-backed chair.
Yeah.
And that would have been relevant to the story if the character, but Allie's in this titanium thing, titanium chair, and she dances and she's sprightly and she's sassy and I stopped thinking about the chair 10 seconds after she first came on stage.
Yeah, because it's not relevant to the story, because again, we're already in a world where we're like, people are singing and dancing. They are telling us a story,
Right.
and they are singing and dancing, and that doesn't happen in real life.
I know. Well, it's
So-
funny like that. I don't know if you watch Game of Thrones.
I don't.
I don't either. But this week, did you see the story about how like there was a coffee cup from Craft Services that they left in a shot, like that didn't get edited out?
Oh.
And it turns out like everyone thought it was a Starbucks cup because of the shape of the cup or something. It turns out it wasn't a Starbucks cup, but Starbucks got something like $25 million worth of free advertising and press because everyone was talking about it. And I
they need
think
that.
I think it was Stephen Colbert who wrote I'm really sorry that this paper coffee cup interfered with your ability to believe in a world where people are like, I mean, I'm like dragons and like
Yeah.
falling in love with people who are back from the dead or whatever it was. But it's like a suspension of disbelief is such a weird, it's such a weird thing.
I think
People
just-
are willing to go there in certain totally outlandish ways and then not in others.
I think it's that people get really tied to these ideas that aren't actually important, that are so deeply linked to their understanding of the world that they can't separate themselves from that.
People want it's confirmation bias. Like they want to go and opt in to something that's going to sort of pat them on the back and confirm that the way they look at the world already
Yeah.
is the way that they should continue to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to even like, it seems like flip to tie it to even like personal preference. Obviously, it's like artistic directors make choices and producers make choices. And those are based on their preferences and beliefs. But it's like at the end of the day, like you're not going to get up in arms because somebody ordered pineapple on their pizza. It's a bad example because people do get up in arms about that.
I mean, to be fair, pineapple on pizza is gross.
Yeah.
No, I just lost half my listenership. I'm just
I-
kidding. Like, do whatever you want with your own body. I believe in that across all.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, I don't want pineapple on a pizza, but I'm not going to tell you not to put pineapple on pizza. I just trust that the world, like, if people really don't want pineapple on their pizza, then it's going to go away. But obviously, somebody wants it, so it's there, you know? Again, for me, it's not for me. Just like that version of Oklahoma wasn't for your friend.
Right.
But it's like, do we criticize, like, again, this is a bad example. I'm like, do we criticize someone's intelligence for liking pineapple on pizza? Yeah, people do. Because they're mean. Why? You know, it's like we're all...
That's I've been thinking a lot about how the way we react to others is totally about the person doing the reacting, not the thing they're reacting to.
Yeah.
Like someone who gets mad because their friend or enemy likes pineapple on pizza, there's something going on in their life. Like it all kind of comes back to hurt people.
Yeah.
And so I think it has almost nothing to do with the pineapple or the pizza or the person eating it, and everything to do with the person who's making the judgment.
Yeah, it's like, who cares? Put what you want on a pizza. Like, love who you love. Like, why does anyone else's decision affect your life? And again, art is subjective. So who cares? Like, if other people like it, can't you just let people like it? But if your complaint about it is like, well, this isn't realistic. Again, we're at the theater. Yeah. So, to me, I think it's important to, which is all a very roundabout way of saying, like, I just think it's important to sometimes like return to things and do them in a way that perhaps is not expected. And I mean, I know for me, again, like I always loved theater, but there was definitely a period of time where I was like, there's no place for me in this. Like, I was 17 and I was like, there's no place for me here. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That like at that point in my life, I had already made this decision that I felt had been made for me. You know, that I wasn't good enough to do this thing.
And here you are.
And here I am.
People
And-
get to where they belong through so many crazy paths.
I guess.
I mean, I dreamed of being on Broadway when I was a little girl, and then I don't know, like in college, I developed such massive stage fright that I ended up like throwing up before I'd go on stage, and I just gave it up. I was like, well, I found a tiny little booth where I could sit alone and talk into a microphone and like play with character and monologue, but nobody had to look at me while I did it, and I became a radio personality. And then cut to like 2 decades later, and I'm getting paid to be on Broadway stages. I'm not singing and dancing and acting. I'm hosting talkbacks and like karaoke parties and stuff, but we end up where we belong.
Yeah. It's wild. Do you ever get nervous though doing this?
I get nervous about anything scripted. I or anything I have to memorize, I'm pretty good these days at like being me in public, like me, the character who has to show up and part of that I think is because as regular listeners know, I'm big into being a work in progress and like, I'm new at this. I'm on an adventure. Being new at something is not the same as being bad at it.
True.
And I'm going to let you see the struggle and we're in it together. So if I do mess up, or if I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot the name of the band I'm supposed to be introducing. Or like, let's say that I had introduced you as Brittain Ashford and you'd be like, it's Brittain. You know, I'd feel awful, but I'd also be like, okay, I'm going to make a note that next time I look up how to pronounce a name before, you know, like that's a pretty...
I also probably like wouldn't even like tell you. I'd probably be like, I'd work it into an anecdotal story.
Just to say your name out loud and see if I got it.
And then my dad was like, Brittain, what are you doing?
Yeah, and then I'd be like, oh my God, did I say it wrong? No, anyway, I mean, that's something that I wouldn't forgive myself because I take research really seriously. But I got there I got hired to interview Chris Jackson on camera during previews of Hamilton on Broadway. And I was hired by an outlet who had hosts that did all their on-camera stuff, but none of them had seen it, and the publicists wanted someone who'd seen it, and I'd seen it both at the Public and in the first week of previews on Broadway, and I was like, I had a major imposter syndrome thing, and I was like, well, I can either close my eyes and go out there and just like hope that I get lucky, or like, what if I did the work? What if I researched the hell out of this and spent 6 hours digging into this guy's background for a 15-minute interview? And that's what I did. And I did go out and I was nervous, but then I went, I know the stuff. I'm going to ask him a question and he's going to give me an answer. And that answer is going to tell me what the next question is going to be. And so anyway, it's all this growth mindset stuff about, so I don't get stage fright in the same way because I'm comfortable being vulnerable in front of people.
Yeah. And that's important. I think that's like
messing up now is part of my brand.
Yeah. Oh man, I need to work on that.
Yeah.
I think
I sort of stumbled backwards into it. And it's been like a lifesaver.
I think like if anything keeps me from doing more theater, which I would like to do. Mm-hmm. Again, like I love doing it, and obviously like doing like I did a show on Broadway, mm-hmm. and I almost like never called out. I was in it, mm-hmm. 8 shows a week, and like doing Ghost Quartet, which of course very different show, but you're literally on the stage the whole time. Yeah. Always doing something. Like I'm totally capable of doing it, even though it's not my technical training background or anything. But the thing that would keep me from pursuing it is that I'm actually so bad at auditioning. Mm-hmm. Like I get so nervous before an audition, which is wild. Because again, it's like, how many people did the Imperial Theater hold? Like it's like 1,200, 1,400 people. Mm-hmm. It's a big theater.
Yeah, and multiply that by 8 times a week for however many weeks.
Yeah, that didn't terrify me.
Yeah.
But there's something about going into a room full of 1 to 5 people, and you're like, oh God. Like there's nowhere, like where do I look? What do I, like...
What do I do with my hands?
Yeah, what do I do with my hands?
Carry that Autoharp.
Oh my
in
God.
there.
You see, and that's one of the other reasons like I love playing my music. Is like, oh God, like, yeah, if I do mess it up, who cares? Because it's mine. Like, oh, and then I just turn around and like, I look at my drummer and I'm like, sorry.
That's a perfect segue. You do have this instrument here.
Oh yeah.
And I was wondering if you'd play something.
I will. I was thinking I was going to do this version of Sony Alone.
I'd love that.
To be honest, I'm very nervous about it though.
Well, there is only one other person in the room.
That's what I'm saying.
Do you want me to close my eyes?
No.
Hide behind a computer screen?
No, I just don't want my mouth to feel so like, I don't want to make the noise rudely into the microphone, but
that noise. I did that. Laura did that. God forbid somebody think that you made that noise.
I mean, well, no, I can do it. I just need to.
Yeah. Yes. Like be vulnerable. Let it be imperfect. My request for you is to play mediocre version of Sony Alone. so the bar is low, so you
Great.
can just relax into it.
Great, then I won't disappoint anyone except for myself.
Let me ask you this. This is a song that was written for you. How do you go about reinventing that?
You know what's interesting? This is actually perhaps a good segue into it. Is that when Dave wrote the song, he always told me that he sort of wrote it based on a song of mine, and I didn't hear that. Like when, of course, like I learned when he played it for me. When I learned it, I was like, I don't hear it. The song in question is a song called "Brooklyn Lullaby."
I love that song. I was listening to it this morning, and it's everybody like that one's on Spotify. You can go listen to that one now. There's plenty of Brittain Ashford music out there that you can hear as we wait for the release of Drama Club. So,
but it's so funny because that song, I think I recorded it in like 2007, like in my bedroom when I like bright-eyed and like first moved to New York, and of course that song is like this very like. And so when Dave was like, yeah, I listened to that, and I wrote Sony Alone sort of that, thinking about that. And I was like, nah, I don't hear it. And then, of course, when I went to learn it in this different way, I was like, oh,
that guy's a genius.
now I see what you did. So to take it, and especially like a song I have sung like 900 times, like at least. I have sung the song so many times.
Sonya Alone?
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably more than any song you've ever sung in your life.
Oh, 100%. Unless there's probably maybe a song that I've sung every day in the shower for like
on
20
my
years.
own, starting when you were 7.
I really like the idea of 7-year-old me going on my own. Anyway,
You know that, like, for 2 years, I begged to see Les Mis, and I finally got tickets on my 10th birthday.
What?
That's how
All
young
right, there
I
it
was
is.
when I was like, I understand Eponine, like, So that was just, again, this is the kind of thing where I pretended I was talking about you, but I was actually talking about myself.
A little projection there, Laura.
Yes, that's what life is.
For real. All right. So yeah, to reinvent this, I just sort of, I don't know. I also, at the end of the day, it's just the instrumentation on the recording is quite different because, it's electric guitars and it's synthesizers and there's a little bit of piano, a little bit of Autoharp, but it's not, there's no string trio in there. Mm-hmm. So again, what I did with a lot of these songs was just sort of like boil them down to the bones, and then you see what you really have, and then the words really hit you in a different way because you're not distracted by anything else. So this one, because I'm so close to it, felt easier, but also more difficult because I was like, I want this to be the right thing.
Yeah.
I actually re-recorded this song. I initially recorded it with like 2 acoustic guitars, and it was really like jaunty and like very true to the music. It was like, that but it was like, I was like, no, that's not what this is. And I like started over, and this is closer. So hard as it is in the coming days, I watch my friend in her strange unnatural state. Don't let her out of my sight. She trails off, stares at nothing, laughs at random, and the letters come. She waits by the window, and I listen at the door, until one day I see by the sad look on her face there's a dreadful plan in her heart. Look, I know you are capable of anything. I know you so well, my friend. I know you might just run away. What am I to do? Who do I ask for help?
but I will stand in the dark for you. I will hold you back by force. I will stand here right outside your door. I won't see you disgraced. I will protect your name and your heart because I miss my friend. I know you've forgotten me. I know you so well, my friend. I know you might just throw yourself over, but I won't let you. I won't let you know. It's on me. And I remember this family. I remember their kindness. And if I never sleep again, I will stand in the dark for you. I will hold you back by force. I will stand here right outside your door. I won't see you disgraced. I will protect your name and your heart because I miss my friend. Because I miss my friend. Because I miss you, my friend.
It's so beautiful and it's so sad. Does it make you think about the show?
It does. It does. And it's always been a hard song for me to perform.
Yeah, there were a lot of tears on that stage.
Yeah.
I mean, yours.
I mean,
As well as everybody watching, I think. But you were crying real tears on that stage.
Oh yeah, I cried every night performing this song. Like, unless I think there were a couple times where I was like sick, and then you're like, oh, I have to like really focus on the notes. But it's also a song that has the luxury of being like, and that's the danger if you there's the line you cross, and there's definitely like a line where and it was like right at the tail end of like Tony nominations time, and like everyone's really stressed out, and I remember, and I had friends there that night, but like I crossed the line. I crossed the line into like ugly tears. I couldn't keep it together.
It was like Brittain was crying. Not
Yeah.
Sonya.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's always me crying. Like, where is the line? Like the thing. I mean, maybe that feels like cheap, but it's like how do you get to the place you need to when you're acting? It's like, of course you want to be in the moment, but it's also like, I am in front of all these people, and it's like, yeah, stripping away this, to me, the song is like, oh, you strip away all the stuff, and it's just what's there is me. Mm-hmm. This is what it is. Yeah. So, but it's always been such an emotionally loaded song. But it was, getting to that point was like pretty, I don't want to say it was easy as a performer. There's always a line that, the way the stage was, the sort of like there was, a person sitting right underneath me, like at that front bar area.
I sat there once.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
All right, so I gave you this line because I gave it to whoever's sitting right there, which is like, I say it to myself, what am I to do? And then I look down to that person and I say, who do I ask for help? Maybe it was you. There was someone once that like I looked down and whoever was sitting there was like already there. Like, because to me that's like it's just the beginning of the song. Like, I'm sad, I'm upset, but I haven't broken the seal yet. But I was like, what am I to do? who do I ask for help? Oh, wait, no, it's what do I do? Who do I ask for help? And then I say, is it all on me to that person? Is it all on me? And this person was just like, and I was like, no, why are you crying? No, I'm going to start crying, and it's too early in the song for me to start crying. It was really hard. I was like, ugh, I have to look away.
Well, let's just pretend that was me and that we had that moment together.
I mean,
or not, if that wasn't a bad. That was a
no,
bad
it was great. I remember being like really touched by it. I was like, oh yeah, because sometimes you're like, God, why do I do this? Why do I play dress up for a living? Like, what's the point?
Then you see like the lives that you're
yeah,
changing.
you see people that you so clearly affect that you're like, oh yeah, that's why I do this.
Well, actually, so we're coming to the end of the show.
No,
I know. Like we could just make this you could just stay for a week and we'll just hang out and play songs and you could teach me Autoharp things and I can be like, I never knew that I could like bawl listening to a song from Greece.
Oh, but you can.
You can. And that song's out now, by the way. You can find it. I mean, I know it's on your social media. Is it on Spotify?
It's on Spotify through my channel.
And you're the one that I want. But when we go, I want to circle back around to the idea of changing lives, because I believe that having any kind of public platform is a responsibility to change lives or change the world for the better. So I close out every show with a segment I call Just Cause. Like, we're going to do one more segment, Just Cause, which, of course, is also a way of saying we're going to talk about a just cause. We're going to talk about an organization doing good in the world. And certainly art brings a lot of joy and love in the world, and in certain ways can absolutely change and save lives. But you have an organization that you support that literally saves lives.
That's the hope. Yeah. It's Be the Match, which I discovered through my downstairs neighbor, who is lovely. I love both of my neighbors, and she, a friend of hers that she worked with, a work colleague, desperately needed to find a marrow match for a specific type of leukemia. And so she was like, you should, I don't even know that I don't even think she said to me, she was like, you should do this. But I think I saw it on her social media. And I was like, oh, hey, tell me more about that. And we had a conversation about it. And then you send away for the swab kit. Mm-hmm. It's really easy to do. And basically you go into a national registry and they try to match you with people who need life-saving marrow transplants and probably other, I don't know if it's something specific that you need, like, to find a match. It's harder than getting just like a blood transfusion.
Yeah. What I didn't realize before doing some research about Be the Match is that I didn't know that leukemia and lymphoma could be curable, but it sounds like this organization is finding a cure based on the idea that this marrow that a healthy body can produce, and like, I don't know if you have an excess of it, but like blood, if you give some away, it grows back. Yeah. And that lives can literally be saved. And this organization, it is the one that takes two strangers and connects them in a way that saves one person's life without taking anything away from the other.
And you don't, it's kind of wild, because I think you don't meet them, or like you're not allowed to communicate with each other initially. I think it's like 6 months, because they don't, if it doesn't work, I don't know, like, I don't know what the rules are.
I think exactly, privacy is always a concern, especially with medicine.
So it's just kind of, you're right though, it's wild though, like, you don't, like, your marrow's gonna grow back, you're healthy, that's maybe the wrong terminology, but like, your body regenerates it.
That's what I meant. I'm not a doctor. Disclaimer.
I am not a health professional.
Please consult with your doctor before, like, giving someone your bone marrow.
But it's wild. I was reading this story, and I can't say that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know until, like, I'd be presented with it. But this guy helped out this woman. It was like, the one in a whatever, how many 100,000s of people they match. And he donates his marrow. She has leukemia, and I think maybe then later she needed some more, and then like over a period of years, and they actually end up developing a friendship. They live in 2 different places. They've never met, but they talk on the phone like he was like they felt like family.
Well, they literally, I mean, I shouldn't say literally. It sounds like maybe they share genetic material like, at this point, and that's what family is. I mean, that's one kind of family.
Yeah.
Families come in all shapes and
all
sizes.
types. Takes all types. But he ended up giving her a kidney, and I was like reading the story, and I was like weeping. And I was just like, people possess the ability to be so beautiful. So I just think that that's like that's, to me, it's easy to do. So.
Well, I am going to send away for one of those kits. I always thought bone marrow involved giant needles to even get tested. And that I could see going the fact that it's a swab kit makes it that much easier for me to say I'm going to send away and get tested. Why not be in this registry?
Yeah.
And I'm also going to make a financial donation on your behalf today.
Oh.
And I'm going to ask everyone listening to do the same, even if it's just $1 or $2. Can you imagine if everyone listening right now put a drop in that bucket? We could really make a difference. So thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us a gorgeous rendition of your new take on Sony Alone, and for spreading just good work and peace. Like you said, you've made peace. You're finding peace, and like what the world needs now. Is
Love, sweet love.
and peace. Thank you. And thanks to everybody listening. You can find us live at dnrstudios.com/Laura and on the free podcast through Apple Podcasts.
3 minutes to showtime.